I wanted to thank, perfect, again, Anthony Bloom, Executive Director at mEducation Alliance. I want to thank the Spix Foundation, Bob Spix, who's joining us as well, and Jim Plamoden, um, as further engaging the mEducation Alliance, along with Mike Dawson of USET Mobile, in this exploration about digital courseware that started last year. Um, and we have a series of activities, not the least of which is this as the first of a series of digital courseware webinars. The report itself can be found on the mEducation Alliance website. Maybe Effie, you could drop the link into it. And we're also going to have in-person workshops about this, not the least of which connected with our first symposium that's taking place in Nairobi in July. We'll have a series of conversations about digital courseware with a variety of both policymakers, EdTech organizations, those that are involved in the ecosystem. If you want more information about the mEducation Alliance Symposium in Nairobi, please email us, more specifically Effie or Ken. And if you could drop the link to the symposium, that would be great. And we will also have other symposia in the course of the year that will also be talking about digital courseware. Okay, so I want to thank the authors of the report, which included prominently Peter and John Kimotho, who have long established histories in education technology. John, you have so many different hats, I don't think I could do justice to it, other than indicating that you're a thought leader and champion in EdTech and Africa, and you've been a consultant in educational technology for a number of institutions, not the least of AUDA NAPAD, the Spix Foundation. You're also on our advisory board. We're excited by that. But then your previous responsibilities that you had working with the Kenyan government as the head of EdTech for them. And Jim, Peter, again, just to acknowledge all the work that you've done in the field of technology and scaling, and really excited that you're both advisors for the mEducation Alliance. We're also really excited that we have, now, is Lillian on the line? I don't know if Lillian Motegi has made it. Effie, can you see?
Yes, she is here.
Yes, Coach.
Oh, you're perfect. All right. Well, welcome. Thanks, Lillian. I know you just arrived on a plane trip. So the panelists that we'll be having a conversation with today include the Assistant Minister, Nathaniel Cisco, in the Liberia Ministry of Education, who's been a leading advocate for technology integration in education in Liberia. As the Assistant Minister for STEM, TVET, and Inclusive Education, he champions reforms that align education with labor market needs. He also works closely with stakeholders to secure resources and implement policies that enhance access, relevance, and equity in education. Nathaniel, we're thrilled that you could join us. So thanks very much for taking the time today. Nathaniel is also indicative of, as John explains, a little bit of the background about those that were interviewed for the report, key policymakers in Africa. And another panelist is Florencio Cebollas, who's a senior program specialist with the Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, KICS, at the International Development Research Center, who has over 25 years of experience in international development and applied research, and has led global programs focusing on education, education technology, youth engagement, citizenship, and social inequalities. Florencio holds a degree in sociology and pursued doctoral studies in sociology as well. So thank you, Florencio, for joining us. And also, Florencio is representative of the other set of stakeholders we interviewed for the mEducation, for this report, who have been longstanding members of the mEducation Alliance. So thank you, Florencio, for joining us as well. And then finally, we have Lillian Motegi, who's an innovative entrepreneur and education technology specialist dedicated to transforming learning for learners with disabilities through EdTech education. With over 8 years of experience in the EdTech space, she specializes in inclusive design and accessibility, holding multiple certifications that underscore her commitment to equitable education. She's motivated by her firsthand experience with challenges faced by marginalized learners, particularly deaf students in primary schools. And Lillian founded Uptake to develop accessible digital tools that bring educational gaps in areas with low teacher-to-student ratios, low literacy rates, and high poverty levels. So Lillian, we're thrilled that you could join us as well. Thank you so much. Before we get to basically a conversation with these three individuals, I wanted to stage set a little just in terms of the background to the report. And first, Peter, it's a report on digital courseware. Before I have John just give a little bit of an overview about the general status and some of the methodology for the report, Peter, what do we mean by digital courseware?
So a couple of points, Tony, before we jump right in. I mean, the first one is I just want to say, when I was young, I had all the answers. It was really quite remarkable. And the older that I got, I'm now at a point where I have far more questions than I do answers. And when I think about this report and I think about how fast changes are happening in digital learning, digital courseware, and all the players that are involved. I mean, the beauty of this report, or the opportunity of this report, is we have had some amazing people that Tony, you were able to kind of bring in as part of the alliance, and interesting perspectives. So we don't have the answers per se, but I think we've had conversations with some of the brightest people, or the leading people in this arena, and including the ability to have the Spix Foundation people involved, because they pushed us, and also Mike Dawson as well. They asked us questions that we didn't necessarily want to answer, or we didn't have a simple answer to. So I think that's an important stage setter as we get into this. And so when we first started thinking about this, I mean, what we look at today as digital courseware may not be what digital courseware looks like tomorrow. That's the tricky part of all this. It's a moving target. And so we tried to be all inclusive, if you will. I mean, everything from e-textbooks to online courseware, learning management systems, educational games, adaptive learning platforms. I mean, the whole kit and caboodle, everything we tried to consider, because I think it was important to do so, particularly as some of these modalities blended with one another. So I think that's where we're at, Tony, as we go into this, and I think that makes it, and it should be an exciting conversation in some ways. So lots here.
Thank you, Peter, for stage setting. And also, again, folks, feel free to use the chat to share if you have other definitions of digital courseware. And then as we open up for Q&A, we'll be really interested in hearing about others who have joined us, what their examples of digital courseware are. So John, now that we've contextualized what the definition of digital courseware is, maybe we'll take just a step back, and then you can help us take a step forward with a general overview of where this report fits in the EdTech ecosystem in Africa. John, do you want us to give you the ability to share slides, or do you want us to advance the slides that you previously sent us?
Let me try to do it from this end. It's
And again, encourage folks, if you haven't already added your institution name to your profile, to your participant profile, feel free to do that.
I don't know. Can you see my slides?
I don't think so. If you...
Not yet.
And John, we could always take the earlier version that you did and we could screen share. John, while you're pulling that up, I could just throw out the first questions to our panelists. Do you want me to do that? So, okay, so maybe the thing
to put my last slides on.
Yes, I am able to.
Okay, perfect.
Just go ahead.
Okay.
I'm in a hotel lobby.
Perfect. All right, take it away, John.
Okay, let me see how I can see this through. Sorry, Tony, I'm not able to see the slides from this end.
Okay, well, John, we could
Just
we're
exit and come back.
yeah, that's perfect. And John, you could just open it on your own computer and then just tell us to advance the slides. But happy to come back to it. Let's just do a little bit of stage setting. Nathaniel or Lillian and Florencio, I want to stage set for a moment. Where could you explain your role in your institutions and where digital courseware fits within those roles? So Nathaniel, I'm just going to start with you just by way of which to explain what that means to you in terms of your institutional responsibilities, and the same question for Florencio and Lillian. Nathaniel, over to you.
So digital courseware is something that we're excited about in Africa, especially Liberia. We see it fits. We see this report fits well in our setting because it unveils the difficulties that we has envisaged over the time. The report makes those difficulties very clear. That is showing us the path out of those difficulties. That's something I'm excited about with the report. The report outlines the challenges and not just makes it unique to Liberia. No, it's not just unique to Liberia. There are other countries that are having similar situations. So this report actually brings us. It's an eye-opening for Liberia, especially for us who are new to digital courseware. It's eye-opening for Liberia, and it gave us the way to go out of those challenges we're having. And I'm really excited about it. And that's where with respect to this report.
Great. And then Nathaniel, just in terms of your role within the Ministry of Education, what are your roles and responsibilities vis-a-vis digital courseware? Just to elaborate a little bit on your professional role.
So Anthony, in Liberia, I am the team lead, the minister over technology. So I have institutions, I have teachers that should be trained in these digital courseware solutions, and so it puts the report puts me and my office in perspective. That is to legislate policies that guides our EdTech, our EdTech platform. Currently, we don't have an EdTech policy. All right, but this report is a tool that I will be counting on. My partners, I'll be counting on the president. I'll be counting on friends of the ministry to find a time where we can carve our EdTech policy going forward. I know we have our friends, Spix Foundation, absolutely very well here with us, but in our TWG meeting not too long ago, a couple of hours ago, we were stressing the need of having our EdTech policy right around these tools that have been developed by MLIs. And that's thing I want to give a hats up to Tony, the rest of the team, the World Bank, and all our partners who are contributing, especially John, who is a Liberian now. Thank you.
All right. Oh, that's great. Okay. Well, thank you, Nathaniel. Florencio, maybe turning it over to you again. We're within the ecosystem, but then I'll deepen it a little bit, Florencio. IDRC has adapted a particular approach in its approach to EdTech, and in particular to digital courseware. I know focusing on the capabilities of education policymakers. How does this influence the work you do? So basically, your role, and then an answer to that question, Florencio, to you.
Sure. And thank you for the invitation and for having me here. So yes, I sit in the International Development Research Center. Somehow we're double hat. I work on an externally funded program, which is a very large program called KICS, or the Knowledge Innovation Exchange, founded by GPE, as well as in internal IDRC funded programming on the area of education. IDRC does work on many other areas and have been there for a long time. What we basically do, or what we mostly do, is to support research, applied research for development on the field of education. So basically, what the kind of things we do is to found and support technically research projects on education that are working on southern-based countries with local capacity, with local researchers, universities, and so forth, to address some pressing education challenges. As part of this package, which includes capacity building and includes mobilizing knowledge and including adapting innovations and tools from other contexts, but also, and I will talk about that in a second, of working with ministries of education and policymaking. Courseware is part of this package in many cases. In some cases, in some of those projects, is very central to it. I'm thinking, for instance, with the University of Concordia, we help them to adapt Abra and READS, which are two quite well-known tools for on digital literacy and math, to context of Zimbabwe, Kenya, and Nepal. Or in the case of Ceibal, we help them to develop courseware specifically focused on rural students in Nicaragua and Honduras, from diverse ethnic communities, groups, and languages. So that as where do we connect. In other cases, is a small element as part of a large project on education of child displaced by conflict or in mobility as part of migratory waves, and that will be part of it. As for your question on where are we sitting and the sort of what do we see as IDRC in terms of more broadly about EdTech and then courseware? Yeah, I mean, IDRC has been supporting for a long time, if you want, the supply, what we used to call the supply side. So innovators that are developing tools, courseware, resources of different kinds that could be used, for instance, in the education sector. And a few years ago, we decided to have some kind of a switch in our approach. And if you want, focus more on the demand side than the supply side. So less on the work that innovators can do in order to, we do still part of that, but much more on what can we do to support country officials, decision makers, policy makers, local ecosystems to make better, more informed on evidence decisions about what they do, what they need, how to ask for it, what to demand, etc. Refine that demand. So we have been working closely with, for instance, ministries of education, and we're working always through other partners. The EdTech Alliance, for instance, the EdTech Hub. Sorry, I mixed both. The EdTech Hub is one of them. Ceibal is another one of them. ESSA, etc. So yes, broadly, Anthony, to close with, that is to be more exposed and more focused on what are the public needs in a world where that seems to be the weakest part of the chain, because they have less agency and capacity to impose their terms. The UNESCO report last year or 2 years ago, on whose terms, I think that nailed that issue, that is the issue of governance and having informed demand, not pressed by the buzz of the day, or which companies can have more connections, but actually on actual needs and conviction that the resources they are incorporating are of good quality.
Perfect, Florencio. And again, if folks have questions that they have for any of our panelists, feel free to drop it in the chat. And then again, we'll have time for Q&A afterwards. Florencio, thanks for sort of describing sort of the strengthening of the local ecosystem that is demand rather than supply driven. Just basically having heard that. So having heard from a policymaker, Nathaniel, and then Florencio, a bilateral donor supporter of that ecosystem, Lillian, it'd be great to get I think it's clearly obvious where you sit within this ecosystem as a provider, but maybe just to describe a little bit about how your institution fits, but more specifically, are there one or two factors you'd highlight to reflect the current status of the digital courseware access and use in low research context from your role of being digital courseware provider. So over to you, Lillian.
Okay, thank you so much. For me, I'll just start by saying that obviously this discussion is very integral in what we do. We are purely all about digital courseware. And for us, it's even more unique for that because we target a very niche market that most of the time is not thought about. It's like an afterthought, especially in Africa, whereby a few countries or most countries are still trying to understand what digital courseware. And even from the discussion, we're also trying to figure out what's the right term for that and what's going on there. So for us now, getting into the niche market of publishing exclusively for learners with disabilities is no small challenge. It's quite a lot. First, you can imagine that it has a lot to do with inclusivity and mostly accessibility, because a lot of the digital courseware materials that are put out there, they are not accessible. And if they're accessible, it's just to one diverse disability. For instance, whatever materials that has been packaged for learners with visual impairments, for instance, cannot in a way be accessible for learners who are deaf and learners with neurodivergent conditions and so on and so forth. So we are really sitting in a place where we are trying to do a lot, but we're also learning in the process. So what is very key for us is definitely collaborations and partnerships, having to work closely with governments for curriculum guidelines and accessibility needs, having to work with specialists in the special needs education, in Kenya being specifically the Kenya Institute of Special Needs Education, and not forgetting, and this we had to learn very quickly. We don't want it to be very, for lack of a better word, very governmenty. Like, it's not about policy, it's really about meeting the needs of the actual learners. So very quickly having to onboard teachers in these schools, having to onboard parents and the learners themselves. How do you want to access this content? Because we also don't want it to be very rigid. There's a way kids are learning. Kids are learning through gamification, through simulations, animations. So we have to incorporate all of these to make sure it's accessible, it's fun, it's engaging, and the learning outcomes are met. And having to follow the curricula of the day. So it's quite a lot. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you, Lillian, also for underscoring a really important factor of a broad definition of accessibility and inclusivity. So thank you for the work of your institution, and also addressing in terms of, I guess, the current status, just in terms of there are some products that are built with accessibility in mind and for target audiences, and there's a number that aren't. So thank you for raising that. Before we dig down into the meso and the micro, John, now that we've heard from a policymaker, from a bilateral supporter of policy, digital courseware and implementation, and then a digital courseware provider, I don't think we need any slides, but John, could you just explain the methodology of the KI report? How many people did we interview? The types of people we interviewed, maybe some of the countries that are involved, just to do a little bit more stage setting, John, for the report itself.
Thank you. And also thank you for the introduction that you earlier gave about me. For everybody else, just call me John when you're asking a question or referring to me. Just call me John, that will be good enough. Again, I want to say, I will have a few slides. Effie, you can start them. But before Effie starts them, to also apologize. Also apologize for the interruption that was there. I'm in a hotel where the whole Africa is there. I think we got interruption of the power, and that didn't do very well, and everything just went dead. Just move to the next, Effie, so that I can move quickly. And the rationale of this study, when we thought about it, was because, yes, we have tried over years to bring technology into education so that it can help us. And the main thing that has always been in the minds of people is access, equity, and quality. That over the years, all the devices we have brought in the field, all the methods that we have brought in the field have always been, can we get better quality in terms of learning outputs? Can we get better quality in terms of the education reaching the pupils and the students? And can we get access and equity in that quality? But over the years, we have noted that that vision has not really been achieved fully. No matter what we do, we bring artificial intelligence, virtual reality, we have not achieved there. And a good test was 2020 when we got COVID. Resilient was actually tested and education technology did not sort us out. So the few people who are thinking about it realize that this is rationale enough to ask ourselves, what is really the problem and how do we go about it? Next. And as we were asking ourselves what to do, then we went into a study that was facilitated by Spix Foundation, and we were doing with Mobiles for Education Alliance. And having the Alliance network was good enough for us to know exactly what to do. And we started by looking at literature that was available so that it could guide us as to what are we really looking for. And we noted that we needed to check on what are people really using at the moment and what is the desire, how would they like the digital courseware to be? And eventually, what is this standing between them and
Oops, did John's sound cut out? Effie?
Yes, I
Yeah,
did.
Okay.
okay. The
Go ahead, John.
interviewees were mainly people in the technical area of using this, government officers who have a lot of experience in it. And we actually went for the top level and the management level that is using this. We went in various countries, but more so in Africa. We were in the Gambia, Ghana, Kenya, Liberia, Malawi, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Zambia. And as we were going through these countries, then we were able to ask the three main question areas, but also interact with these people more deeply. Next. Our other source of data was the Africa Union, and we realized in our literature review with the EduNEP that there was even Africa Year of Education. And this Africa Year of Education was searching for the same thing that education technology has been searching for, to have resilience in education systems, increasing access and equity. And truly, it was looking at that equity in quality, but also the dynamism in terms of pedagogical approaches that the teachers were using. And therefore, you will find again, could technology come in and help us in improving and retooling our teachers so that we can have a lot of development in this area of education. This helped us in terms of carving our questions and being able to dig deep into what is really digital courseware and how is it being used. Next. And as we went through with our key informant interviewees, we still found ourselves in the same realm of what is the status, what is the ideal vision, what are these barriers standing in between. And we ended up, me and Peter, saying, even after COVID and during COVID, we learned that from the key interviewees that there was a lot of upscaling in terms of using technology. However, access, quality, and equity remained there. Teacher development still remained a barrier. Digital transformation remained a barrier, and even content that was being used, as one of the key informant interviewees, Lillian, has explained, is that issues to do with inclusivity and content for special needs was still a pain that was being said by the people we interviewed. Next. And in the same note, we were able now to go and complete that. And if if we are to look at that, then you can get the QR code. But this report is already available in mEducation Alliance. Next, I'm just going to highlight some of the findings that came out so that we are at the same note, is that there was limited infrastructure that was said all over, and therefore we need to think, what do we do when there is no infrastructure? Lack of apps was also another issue that came out, and interoperability of the apps that were available. And then other issues that came out was, could we use technology offline? Other issues that came out was local content in terms of language and context. And then the decision makers, we are also looking for data. These are issues that we got, just like findings. We are picking the key findings. Next. And other issues in terms of recommendations, where could you people improve in terms of the technology we are using? Could there be, these are the barriers that came out, make the apps work together. The other barriers that we highlighted about was the low cost in terms of learners and teachers, and also sustainability. There are those who could say that we have this courseware, but we are not able to continue in terms of license modeling and the rest. All those came out as barriers and recommendations that came out. Finally, next. Yeah, issues that came out in conclusion in the thinking of the policymakers who we interviewed is they actually need access, and access to everything. All the technology EdTech apps they want to use, whether it is teacher management, they need access. The other thing that they came in saying is that they want continuity in usage, sustainability. And could this actually come to bring sustainability and resilience in terms of bringing transformation? These were conclusively some of the things that came out of this study. And therefore, it is upon us as people in this field to continue discussing it and look for the solution as we go along. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. That's a terrific overview, and then good marketing to have people read the report. So it's on our website. Effie will drop it in. Thank you, John, and we'll be happy to share your slides as well. Okay, John, thanks for taking us at the macro level in terms of key findings of the report. Now to return to pick up some of those themes with our policymakers. Nathaniel, I want to ask you a question building upon one of the areas that we looked at in the report related to challenges. There are obviously many interrelated factors for effective digital courseware use. But can you give us one or two specific examples from your vantage point within the Ministry of Education, which you would prioritize over others to address, just in terms of immediate challenges? Not everything, but what are the things that come foremost that you would prioritize as challenges that you're looking for solutions? Nathaniel, over to you.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you, Blooms and the team. And John. So in Liberia, we are joining, making great advances, with making great achievements. Basically, there are two areas that I would like to prioritize above other areas. One is it has to do with infrastructure and device accessibility. All right. Now we do have connectivity and infrastructure as our main challenge. So if we must prioritize what goes first, we will prioritize infrastructure and device accessibility. Now that means that we will have to have access to consistent electricity, internet connectivity, and device, a digital device, for our students. Without such thing, and those devices includes laptops, tablets, or smartphone. Without such thing, the entire digital courseware simply cannot function. All right, there's a foundational barrier. So prioritizing investment in solar power solutions and affordable internet access and device distribution, especially in underserved rural areas, who create the necessary condition for any digital learning initiative to take roots and remain. either to skill out. So that's one. Second one has to do with teacher training and digital pedagogical skills. Because we have where we are now in the courseware is digital courseware. We are at digital literacy and teacher readiness. So I must prioritize what goes first. I will prioritize teacher training and digital pedagogical skills. Even where infrastructure exists, many teachers lack the training to effectively use digital courseware. So building teacher capacity through practical, ongoing professional development in digital literacy and pedagogical skills is crucial. Prioritizing these challenges will push Liberia to where we are, especially MLIs want Liberia to get on the digital map. Thank you.
Great. Nathaniel, thanks for emphasizing infrastructure and teacher training from your vantage point within the ministry. It's fabulous to have your participation and the other policymakers as part of the interviews, understanding your day-to-day challenges. Hey, Florencio, I want to pick up with, let's talk about sort of didactic material on courseware. It's a little bit about the content. How do you relate the production of didactic material and courseware from a Southern country's perspective and the needs and challenges in these countries, in these contexts? How do they relate to elements in the advancement of EdTech policies, just in terms of that where does that fit in the ecosystem? Over to you, Florencio.
Thank you, Anthony. Yes, well, the first thing is that I don't think you can't link the production of courseware without talking at the same time of the use and the pertinence of it in national context. You know, it's not just the production, it's how it connects with the broader ecosystem that is not only about making it happen, it's also about making happen something that is needed and that is used. And of course, there are so many dimensions, and I agree with the colleague before. One of the first ones is, of course, access to devices, to technology, access to connectivity, access to electricity or hydro in many contexts, of course. And I think that poses the question on what means to generate courseware in low-tech environments that are cognizant of those environments, that understand what those environments are and could adapt to what is available today, not what could be available at scale, I mean, in years. And I think it's important to understand that low tech is not high tech from the US 20 years ago or 15 years ago. It's different. It's low tech with capacities that are available today, handhelds or other devices. But beyond that, a couple of things: localization, adaptation, language, cultural pertinence of what is prepared is fundamental, you know. And we have done with IDRC and with KICS quite a lot of work on making sure those adaptations are made and are made locally, you know, are made at the same time that develop local capacity to keep those coursework updated, relevant, pertinent, etc. TPD, teacher professional development, for sure, a major piece of that. We tend to think about courseware more about final materials for students. I think that teachers are, both if you're going to work with students or just with the teachers, is fundamental, that piece. And I think what means courseware for teachers and for teacher professional development. I think that the long-term sustainability has to be considered in this relationship between courseware and Southern country perspectives. The sustainability of the teams, of the contents, of the business models or the costing models that are associated with those innovations. You know, like free software with extremely expensive maintenance fees are not a solution. You know, and you see many companies and innovators are in good faith that they still rely on models of sustainability of that is not sustainable, you know, from a country policy perspective. So understanding cost, understanding openness of resources, long-term sustainability. I think that's is critically important. Understanding policy. You know, when I say that in the IDRC perspective, we're working more on the demand side than the supply side, I'm not saying that we are taking away the innovators from the ecosystem. What we think that where we can add value, and I think it's important, is for those innovators to understand what are the policies. Innovate based on demand, but for that you need to understand, okay, this is the educational reform process this country is going. Those are the priorities. Is literacy of kids out of school? Is support of secondary education? Is focus on retention of girls? Is, you know, and if you don't have that, it's very difficult to elaborate pertinent or adapt or elaborate or build, I don't know, pertinent courseware and courseware material. So understanding policies is important in this context, and understanding that policies are a moving target. You know, just to give you an example, the entire demand, for instance, on Central American countries due to new policies regarding migration, that changed an entire dynamic in an entire sub-region in the last 3 months. You know, people those moving south is now moving north, or are staying in countries that used to be in transit. That puts a huge demand on ministries of education, relying among other things on technologies, and that is new. You know, so it's not that you understood the policies forever. You need to understand the policies as they happen and adapt your courseware development to that. I will stop now.
No, Florencio, thanks for like furthering the conversations about factors in the ecosystem that build upon what Nathaniel was talking about in terms of what he sees from his policy perspective, but also noting that you said not to take technology from 10 years ago in the US and to import in Africa, but also in the definition of technologies that Peter talked about, it does include audio and video. So radio or visual, it's not the media, it's the content, and then how do you get access to it? So I think it's just wanted to emphasize
educational TV was the most successful, probably, resource to cope with education in many countries during the pandemic.
Terrific.
It worked much better than Mexico, for instance.
Perfect. So Lillian, having heard about sort of the vantage point of policymakers and donor investors in regards to it, can you give us like a specific example of a good practice or initiative or opportunity for digital courseware in the context that we're talking about? Something that may not just be exclusively related to uptake education, but something that can be replicated or scale. And the more specific you could be with a single example, that would be appreciated. So over to you, Lillian. Lillian?
Okay, sorry.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Struggling with internet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I had maybe the last bit of the question, if you don't mind repeating the question.
I'll ask you, and then if you don't mind, keep it fairly brief because we'd like to have a few minutes for general audience questions. I said our input. Can you just give us a specific example of a good practice, initiative, or opportunity for digital courseware access? Something that could be replicated or scaled. And again, just keep it fairly brief, but that would be terrific if you could give us one example.
Okay. I think in our case would be like leveraging on what already exists, not really like trying to, build from scratch everything. And these I would say especially from the platform side. So you can leverage on the open source platforms, and then definitely with the content you have to localize it, and then you have to adapt also now the platforms with the use case For instance, you can have the plugins that already exist in terms of, the screen readers, the magnifiers, the color contrast, and all the softwares that exist, examples, Userway, so on and so forth. So you don't have to build everything from scratch, especially if you're just exclusively publishing content. So you don't have to publish content and also have the business of now publishing platforms from scratch and systems and everything like that. So what you really have to be careful, especially in the context of the African context, I would say, for instance, is we struggle a lot, especially the platforms that exist. They are purely made for just online consumption, and that, I think, is where we go wrong. So we have to take the user case scenario of publishing for all areas, including the marginalized areas. That means implementing the offline and low bandwidth solutions so that, for instance, make the content downloadable, which most of the case is not there. And I think this also has a lot to do with accessibility. If we can't access content online all the time, that means we can't rely on it. But if there's a way to download it, if there's a way to have it consumed like locally, I think that can help, especially with areas with internet issues. And then definitely I'm heavy on collaborations and partnerships. You cannot build alone, have great partnerships with government agencies, with providers of devices to embed the content in the devices, and the teachers and the parents as well. So in essence, what I'm saying is exist in a community of EdTech players in the ecosystem. So
Great.
yeah.
Thank you, Lillian. And that's perfect because that, as we just wrap up this formal part of it as well, that really is the spirit of the mEducation Alliance, quite frankly. And this partnership with the Spix Foundation is avoiding duplication of effort, highlight the good works of others, see how we can catalyze improvements. All right, so knowing that we have like 40 plus people on the line and we just have a few minutes left, we're going to do a little rapid fire opportunities for people to ask some questions. You could drop it in the chat. We're going to take 3 questions. Please indicate who do you want to address it to. In the interest of time, your question cannot be, hey, Florencio, how can digital courseware be used to solve world peace and promote harmony? So it has to be more specific than that, gentlemen or ladies, in terms of your question. So let's keep it really, really specific. So if people could indicate by raising their hands, jumping on. Again, just in the interest of time, is please introduce yourself, ask your question, don't make a policy statement, and then we'll take 2 or 3 of these. Who would like to ask a question of our panelists? And see, now everybody's, Effie, they're like, I was going to ask the question about world peace. So now, like, Tony already took my question, but that's... So who is there anybody who would like to contribute to the conversation? So Carmen, go ahead. Carmen Streigel, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Really appreciate the report and the work that went into it. I would love to hear what were, some of the best examples the team has seen. And sorry, I realized that my video is not good, so let's call that a day. What were some of the best examples that folks have seen, and what make them particularly compelling as you all were doing the background research for the report?
Okay, thank you, Carmen, with Carmen, Senior EdTech Guru Specialist, RTI. Did I do justice to your title?
You did it much better. I'm going to adopt that one.
Oh, okay, good. There we go. All right, so let's take maybe 2 other questions, really brief, and then we'll open it up for the panel to respond to. Carmen's question had to do with, give me a specific example of a good practice. And now, first we'll go back to the panelists. Any other, I don't see any other, are there any other hands that are up? Effie, help me out if we drop through the screen.
Jim's hand is up.
Who? Jim, go ahead.
Jim Commandant, Spix Foundation. There seem to be an awful lot of EdTech startups that fail in distribution. Once their startup funding ends, they have no business model to succeed. Am I correct in that or wrong in that?
Great, Jim. Question gets to the issue of longevity, sustainability as well, just from that private sector vantage point. Okay, I'm going. Any other? I don't see any other hands. Kevin, you're the last. Be brief. Go ahead, Kevin, introduce yourself and please ask your question. If you have to do with
You are
sound, though,
muted.
sound would be. Kevin, you got to turn on your.
Oh, sorry. My name is Kevin Irungu, software developer. I'm at my workshop at the moment, currently trying to introduce this guy at an African level, so at an African context as well. My question to the team is, you've talked about online, offline solutions. I get a lot of backlash on how are you going to make this an online solution. I have a couple of answers to that, but I'd like to extend to the team how robotics and artificial intelligence can be applied in an African context, keeping in relation the offline-online debate on having course curriculum for students. Thank you. Back to you, Tony.
Great. Yeah, Kevin, do you want to add your institution name to your profile as well? That would, or just drop it in the chat. All right, so we got, again, in the interest of time, you don't have to answer all the questions, panelists. So we have from Carmen, give me a good example, a good practice example. And so I would invite any of the panelists to talk about one specific example that they'd like to provide. Jim, your question had to do with sustainability. There's lots of startups, but they don't necessarily continue. Any reflections on that? And then Kevin, I think your question was about sort of offline, again, emphasizing the importance of offline. Let me just open it up to the panelists to respond to any of those. Nathaniel, I'll start with you. Do you want to address any of those questions?
Yes, okay. So let me talk about the one that spoke about the issue of he talks about sustainability, good practice. Jane talked about sustainability, and then another person talked about good practice. I think one of the good practice we see from EdTech, revolution in Liberia is what I saw the Spix Foundation doing here in Liberia, engagement with stakeholders and making them to understand that this is relevant to change the dynamics of our country and change the dynamics of our student perspective on digital courseware. We have, an engagement, and those are where policies comes about. All right, they are beautiful policies that are crafted, as James said, but when it comes to sustainability, it becomes a problem. So I want to use Spix intervention in Liberia as one good example that we can use when we think about rolling out a digital courseware to any country and any society. I'd like to stop there.
Yeah, thank you, Nathaniel. Florencio, any of those questions that you want to respond to? Florencio, are you there? Maybe Florencio hung up by accident. Oh no, not an effective use of digital courseware. Lillian, Lillian, do you want to talk about any of the issues? Lillian, just keep it really brief. We
Sorry, I
just have
pressed the wrong button.
Oh, go ahead, Florencio.
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, on Carmen's question, thinking about examples of particularly successful cases, I've seen several. I don't know if they're mentioned on the report or not. Somewhere mentioned. I was talking about Concordia, Ceibal has quite a lot, and many organizations in Africa as well. I think that it relates to a certain method of developing things, understanding the local context, the local cost, and also having proof. I think that ministries of education in particular wants to understand that there is evidence backing up interventions, evidence of actual learning in this context, in the context where they are suggesting to implement a certain courseware on learning gains, on literacy, etc. So that would be my only comment.
Great. Well, Florencio, thanks so much. In the report, there are a number of courseware examples, Carmen, just to let you know, including those that are obviously highlighted by the policymakers and the Ministry of Education officials. But as this is the first of a series of dialogues, we're hoping to build that base of knowledge, including having monthly webinars on this topic. I just want to conclude by thanking our three panelists, and then John and Peter for their authorship and Spix Foundation for their support. What about a little round of applause or emoticons or emojis or balloons that you have? Thank you. Effie, do you just briefly want to mention the symposium and some of the conversations that will be taking place in Nairobi? Effie, over to you.
Yes, sure. So the mEducation Alliance team is organizing a symposium, a regional event that's taking place on the 22nd, from the 22nd to the 25th of July in Nairobi, Kenya. That's happening at Semastea, and this is in collaboration with Semastea and AUD NEPAD. Digital courseware will definitely be something that we get to talk about at the symposium, but broadly speaking, it is STEM focused. We have a number of different themes that I think are very cross-cutting, as long as you're working in foundational learning. Ken will drop a link to the event in the chat. Tony just did. If you're interested in joining us, we'd love to have you all join us. Please feel free to submit a proposal to attend as a general attendee. We had very limited presentation slots, so those are currently out, but we are still accepting general attendees. If you're free and available from the 22nd to the 25th of July, we would love to have you join us for the symposium at Semastea. And of course, a number of the people who are present for this call will be present there and would be looking to engage further. Tony?
Thank you, Effie. Effie, and when's the next webinar that we're planning for this conversation about digital courseware?
So our next webinar is happening on the last Thursday of June. That is the 26th of June. We will be sharing out more details in a week or so.
Okay, and we'll be putting this recording, sharing the slides, putting it on our website, and again, building out even an interview playlist with people that we interview about digital courseware. Stay tuned. There'll be a lot of exciting developments, including announcements that the Spix Foundation the collaborators will be making in Nairobi and thereafter. So now a round of applause for each of you. So you could just turn to the little screen next to you, the little head next to you, and then congratulate them for being here as well. Thank you. And then please reach out to us. We have a newsletter that goes out every 2 or 3 weeks. Always happy to profile the great works of this institution as well, of your institutional work. I'm going to give you back, now that we've spent 3 minutes of your time, please join us for the after party where we have unlimited donuts and coffee. That's all virtual for those that can make it in the virtual room afterwards. Our way of saying thank you for joining us today's webinar. Look forward to seeing you virtually or otherwise in the future. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Effie, I'll drop an email to you tomorrow. Bye.